Okay, that went well. Hello my bookworms, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sydney, and today's video we are going over all of the books that I read in the month of March, or better known as my March wrap-up. I don't know why remembering what month it is always so hard for me. Time is relative, am I right? So in the month of March, I ended up reading my entire Spin the Bottle TBR. It went really well. I had a great reading month. So ultimately, I ended up reading 8 books as well as a really small poetry collection. And it was just it was a great month. So let's chat about it. A couple of these books I had in a pretty extensive reading vlog, so when I get to them, I'll probably just like give some general thoughts. But other than those books, we'll start it out strong with King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo. In King of Scars, this is basically following the Grisha trilogy as well as the Six of Crows duology, which I originally thought that it was just following the Grisha trilogy, but this book was also written after the Six of Crows duology, I think. Yes, it was definitely written after the Six of Crows duology. And in it, we're following the King of Scars himself, which is Nikolai, as well as Nina and Zoya. It's basically a spinoff in which we are following them trying to keep the kingdom safe amongst the constant turmoil, as well as the turmoil that is living within Nikolai himself. And if you've read the Grisha trilogy, then you know what kind of darkness lives within Nikolai due to the Darkling. And I just want to say that I love this hardcover so much. It is absolutely stunning. And I've had this book for quite some time, and I finally got around to it. And I ended up having a great time reading it. I wanted to get to it this past month because obviously Rule of Wolves came out, I think in April 20th? 30th. I think it was the 30th. Yes, because that was when the Shadow and Bone trailer came out. Kaz Brecker, you have my heart. But since Rule of Wolves was coming out, I wanted to get to King of Scars. And like I said, I had a great time reading it. It was really fun to be in the Grishaverse again since I hadn't been in this world since I've read the Six of Crows duology, probably at least like about a year ago. I really enjoyed all the different perspectives that we were seeing from all of our different characters. It was cool seeing the different parts of the story that were happening at the same time, but in different locations throughout the Grishaverse as they came together at the end. And throughout the whole story, I was like super interested in it. I just really like being in the Grishaverse. It feels like a home to me. But the last 100 pages of this book is really where it took off and why I rated this book like a 5-star on Goodreads. Ultimately, I would give it a 4.5, but I rounded up on Goodreads because we don't have the luxury of the half stars. But that last 100 pages, like a lot of shit happened and it was just popping off. It was really good. I have a connection with these characters already, so anything that's going on within them and to them, I just care a little bit more, I guess. So part of my rating might be more of like a nostalgia thing, because I know not a lot of people really loved this book, but I had a great time reading it, so I gave it like a 4.5. The next book I read in the month of March was Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. In this story, we follow Grace Porter, who just recently graduated with her PhD in astronomy, but is having a hard time figuring out what to do with it and where to go from there. She ends up going to Vegas to celebrate her graduation with a group of friends, where she gets drunkenly married to a random girl named Yuki Yamamoto. When Grace wakes up and realizes what has happened, she goes back home, but ultimately wants to escape her parents' expectations and the struggling job market and finds herself going to live with her new wife in New York City. But reality comes crashing in, and Grace must face what she's been running from all along, the fears that make us human and the need for connection, especially when navigating the messiness of adulthood. And I absolutely love this book. Straight up, I love it so much. I give it 5 out of 5 without a doubt. I wouldn't be surprised if I reread this at some point in the future because I just didn't want to put it down. Morgan Rogers' writing was absolutely beautiful. The characters themselves were so relatable in very different ways. And ultimately, just how like mental health or lack thereof, so like mental illness is portrayed in this book, while the main character is also dealing with a very strict household or upbringing. I just feel like it was super spot on, and it was a really well done, super intriguing story. This was a 2021 release that came out last month, so if you have not gotten your hands on this book yet, I 100% recommend it. It made me cry, it made me laugh, it made me, I don't know, contemplative, and it was just so good. So 5 out of 5. The next book I read in the month of March was Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas, and it was great. I loved it. I am continuously surprised how much I'm loving this series, and I just can't wait to continue. I don't know. I just never thought that I would be a Sarah J. Maas stan or enjoy Throne of Glass at all, but I'm so trash for it now. It is just so good, okay? I don't know why y'all hate on it so much. I am having a blast reading this series. So much happened in this one, and I am so excited to move on to Heir of Fire this next month in April. And I ended up giving it a 5 out of 5. Okay, I have no other thoughts. I just think that it is a super interesting, just quick-paced, gripping story. I don't know how to talk about Throne of Glass. I just know that I'm having a blast reading it, and I gave it a 5 out of 5. That's it. The next 3 books that I'm gonna talk about are in that reading vlog that I mentioned earlier. It was my next installment of my Blank Made Me Do It series where I read my favorite booktubers' favorite books. And in that episode, it was Nicole who gave me a list of her favorite books, and I picked 3 of them to read, as well as adding on a 4th book. So I'll leave the link to that video down in the description so that you can get like the vlog real-time reactions to these books. It's all spoiler free, but really quick, I'll just give you kind of like a rundown of 3 of them because one of them was in my February wrap-up, which was Monday's Not Coming. And then after that one in that vlog, I picked up City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, which I read in the month of March. And in the City of Brass, we follow our main character, Nari, who is a con woman of unsurpassed skill. During one of her cons, she ends up summoning a ancient djinn named Dara, who ends up teaming up with her in a way to travel across the magical desert to get to the City of Brass. In the City of Brass, her very presence threatens to ignite a war that has been simmering for centuries. And this book kind of made me nervous. Like, I had no idea how I was gonna feel about it, but I was going off the basis that, like, I know a lot of people here on BookTube really, really loves it. So I was still excited to get into it. And let me tell you, I adore this book. I am so excited to continue this series. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 without a doubt in my mind. And I said it a few times in that reading vlog, but the pacing in City of Brass is second to none. I feel like how this story was told has just set up the other 2 books in this series to be absolutely wild. The first book in a series has a lot of like foundation work, right? Because you got to learn about the world, learn about the magic system and the characters and so on and so forth. And this book did it at like the perfect increments. I don't know, it was just a great reading experience. And in this book, you really only get like the surface level of what the magic is gonna be like and the political system. So if I loved this book as much as I do, then I am expecting to love the next 2 books in this series as well, because I could only assume that we're going to get to know the characters deeper, obviously, as well as the magic system and the politics within this world. So S.A. Chakraborty really has created like such a magnificent story already. So I, again, am just really excited to continue. 5 out of 5. The next book that was in that vlog is Call It What You Want by Bridget Kemmerer. In this book, I ended up giving it a 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. I think in my heart, it might be like a 4.5 to 5 stars, but I have found myself thinking about this book quite often since I finished it, and for a couple of reasons. Again, this book is in that reading vlog, so I've said what I'm gonna say right now a little bit already, but I don't know what it was about this book, but I could not put it down. I needed to be with these characters and just figure out how it was gonna end. I don't know. It was just so gripping, and again, I don't know why, but I loved it. If you're not familiar with this book, we follow 2 main characters named Rob and Megan, and they're both dealing with some pretty serious mental and emotional struggles at home as well as at school. So they're both pretty isolated, and the way that Bridget Kemmerer wrote those situations and how these characters were dealing with it within themselves as well as with others, it just felt super real, it felt super relatable, and just overall like super well done. On Rob's side of the story, it says it on the back of the book, so it's not a spoiler, but his father ended up embezzling funds from half of the town and ultimately tried to commit suicide once he was found out, but it was a failed suicide attempt, so he is basically living off of tube feeds and is in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. And the way that Bridget Kemmerer wrote his character, Rob's dad, into the story and described him and just his role, it was just very, very spot on, because I work in a neuro ICU and we have a lot of patients who come in from suicide attempts attempts or assaults with like gunshot wounds to the head, and it's really, really brutal. And if they do survive, then a lot of them are like Rob's father, and the way, again, that Bridget Kemmerer wrote him is just very, very accurate, and it was just really cool for me to see what I see in my work portrayed pretty accurately in a book. I don't know, I just really appreciated that aspect of it. So all in all, I did end up giving this book a 5 out of 5 on Goodreads, and would definitely find myself recommending this to people. The next book that I read in the month of March, and at the end of that reading vlog, was Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Seanan McGuire. This was not on my scheduled TBR video. It was because the end of that video, I take a prompt from the person that I'm reading about. So Nicole sent me a prompt, and this was the book that I chose with it. And this is the second book in the Wayward Children series, and this was by far my favorite of the two, and I absolutely loved it. I read it in one day. It's super short. It was only a 4-hour audiobook, so I read it in 2 hours. In the Wayward Children series, we follow a child or a group of children who find these pathways or doorways to their homes. In these homes, it's basically like another realm or world where these children feel most safe. And somehow they have gotten kicked out of their home into the present day real life where their parents don't really know what to do with them anymore. So their parents send them to Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children. And in this specific edition of this series, we follow Jack and Jill while they travel through their doorway and end up in the moors, which is their home. And the amount of stuff that happened within this book, with how Seanan McGuire writes, it felt like I read a 300-page book, but it's less than 200 pages. Seanan McGuire is a magician, I swear, because this book was incredible. Like, I will be hard-pressed if another book in this series makes me feel as strongly as I do about this one. That's how much I loved it. It is pretty dark and spooky, but like that's how I like it. Obviously, it's a 5 out of 5. It was just so good. It was awesome, and I am very much looking forward to reading more books from this series for sure. The next book that I read in the month of March was From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. In From Blood and Ash, we follow our main character, Poppy, who is chosen from birth to be the Maiden, meaning she is never to be looked on, never to be touched, and never to be spoken to or experience any sort of pleasure. She's waiting for her day of ascension to see if she has been found worthy of the gods. And before then, she gets assigned a bodyguard by the name of Hawk Flynn, who incites her with anger and makes her question everything that she's been taught, especially because he is tempting her with the forbidden. And this book was a ride. It was an experience, that's for sure. It took me a while to get into it, I'm not gonna lie, but once Poppy kind of like got over herself and started to like become her own person in a way, I started enjoying it a lot more. But definitely towards the front of the book, I was just annoyed with Poppy. I really didn't care much about her. Now, I am excited to move on to Kingdom of Flesh and Fire at some point soon, because the ending of this book, definitely a cliffhanger. Definitely want to see what's gonna happen. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5. I had a great time reading it once Poppy got over herself a little bit. And I really did like Hawk's character. I felt like he was really the thing that was carrying this book for me. And for this book being over 600 pages, I definitely got through it pretty quick because I was very interested in it. I did want to see where it was going. But yeah, it was definitely a 4 out of 5 read for me. The next book that I read in the month of March kind of destroyed me. And it has become one of my favorite books ever. It is The Death of Vivek Ogee by Akwaeke Emezi. And this book does so much. It does so much so well. Before I actually read this book, I remember always being kind of confused by the synopsis on the inside of the book, but obviously it makes perfect sense now. Akwaeke Emezi is just such an incredible writer. This story touched on so many things like gender, acceptance, mental illness, friendship, family, found family in a way, as well as death and grief. And oh my god, I just want to reread it now. If you have thought about picking up this book or were questioning whether you should or not, this is me telling you, please pick up this book. It was absolutely incredible. I definitely cried, and I definitely felt so much joy at some parts as well. But oh my god, it's so good. 5 out of 5 if I even have to say it. Obviously 5 out of 5. And then the other last little poetry collection that I read, it was for the Buzzwordathon because the buzzword for the month of March was time. And I read this cute little poetry collection from Rainer Maria Rilke called Poems from the Book of Hours. super short, and it was really good. I mean, Rilke is one of my favorite poets ever, and this little collection was just really good. I don't rate poetry collections. I mean, I just don't feel the need to. And it says, written as spontaneously received prayers, they celebrate a God who is not the creator of the universe, but rather humanity itself, and above all, that most intensely conscious part of humanity, the artist. And it's just like, it's the cutest little collection ever. Like, how could you not be excited to pick this up? I don't know. So, I mean, I had a really good reading month. All of these were either 4 or 5 stars. I think that's amazing. I can only hope that April's gonna go just as well. And yeah, so that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with me for a little bit. If you are still watching, then leave the clock emoji down below in the comments and let me know what your favorite book was from this past month, or if any of these have caught your eye. Once again, thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to subscribe down below, like the video. I always appreciate your support. And of course, be kind to one another and happy reading. Bye.